for NBA and maybe some NHL and maybe some PGA for the next, I guess, hour or so until people or I get bored. I first want to give a what's the word I'm looking for? A belated shout out to our own Adam Perry for taking down the tennis slate GPP yesterday. Those are not very they're not very easy to do solo shipping, but I think that the combination of the several times I've taken it down and now Adam, I think we're onto something with the combination of projections and SaberSim to build lineups. Again, when you have small slates, and even 15 games is still a small slate, to be able to get unique with lineups that have a chance to win is really important. And Adam's worked really hard at DFS, and it's always good to see people who work really hard get there. And again, I know the story that you don't want to be results oriented, and we do like to judge things at the time that before the results come in, and the fact that you were able to get unique lineups with highly projectable lineups are or whatever. Okay, so let's get right into some of these questions. I appreciate that right in there. For NBA, how much do you trim your pool in SaberSim? I don't trim it at all in SaberSim until I make my builds. So when I start with, and you know what? That's a really good question. So why don't we do this? Let's have a little bit of fun and show exactly what I want to do. So I'm going to share my screen. I think I'm going to share my screen. Yeah. So I'm going to share my screen, and I will share my SaberSim, and I'm going to start from the beginning. Okay, so we're going to go back into here, and we are going to, once again, let's build, let's build 150. I'm not going to play 150, but just kind of to answer your question. So I have my projections already loaded, and whether it's SaberSim projections, Sheets projections, whatever it is, it doesn't change the process. Okay, so here I've built 150 lineups, and what I've done is I've done nothing yet, right? I do not trim my pool. I do not set any rules. I do not do anything. I use their default sliders. Literally, not a thing has changed. I kept min unique players 1, no min or max salary cap, just whatever it is. Now, what you can do at this point, okay, is, well, there's several things you can do, but one thing you could do, and don't dismiss this as an option, is to just leave it, okay? And I know that that's not what people want to hear sometimes. They say, well, you put your projections in, but then you let the computer or the optimizer just kind of do your work for you, and you're not putting your own spin on anything. I mean, what are you doing? But just because you don't want to make any changes doesn't make it wrong. Remember, this is a very highly powered algorithm that creates these lineups. And given the fact that we've already differentiated ourselves by using different projection models, whatever, the combination of our projections plus SaberSim's kind of like smart randomizer does give you a good amount of lineups that are really strong. And you can make the case that you shouldn't do a single thing different. Okay. Now, what you could do is this. So if you're playing 150, the first thing that I'll notice is that I'm getting 91% Josh Richardson. Now, if you want to reduce the amount of Josh Richardson you're getting kind of manually, that's okay if it's because you want to reduce risk. In other words, if your risk tolerance is such that you don't want to get more 90% of a single player, then I have no problem with you manually reducing risk by not wanting to get 91% Richardson. But in that case, like if that's what you want to do, I suggest that you go back to the beginning. In other words, if you just, for example, instead of getting 91% Richardson, at this point, say put max 50, like it will, well, it actually won't. It won't even let you because it's that sure of the Josh Richardson play that if you go and get 50%, it's not even going to have enough from your pool. But let's just say that it can. Let's redo this. Trying to make a point, and Sabersim's getting so mad at me for not. I should actually do 1,500 lineups, right? It'll give me more to choose from. But so this is one way you could do it. I can manually give myself 50% Josh Richardson, but what that does is it also artificially like boosts these other guys up too. And maybe this is not the way I want to do it. So this is one way to do it. But another way, instead of making the max of say Josh Richardson 50, let's put it back to the beginning and let's just run it right from the beginning. And from the beginning, now we can put say max exposure 50%, because we've already shown, listen, you've already said that you don't feel comfortable with more than 50% of a single player specific, because listen, you didn't want more than 50% of Josh Richardson, who was the best play. So obviously you don't want more than 50% of anybody. So if you rerun it from the beginning, I think it produces sort of similar but a little bit different results. Okay, so that this is the first thing that you can do. So now your new build has nobody more than 50%. And when you say, do you want to trim your pool? I really wouldn't do that, okay? Unless, again, unless you just don't like guys. And I know that this is kind of anathema to data science and all this stuff, and supposed to do it differently. But for whatever reason, maybe because I'm older, I look at things a little differently. You know what? I think it's okay to do stuff like this from time to time. So, like, let's just say I don't like Eric Gordon. I just don't feel like playing it. I don't know why, but I don't feel like it. You could just X him out at this point, you know? And yes, you could have at the beginning, you know, X'd out Eric Gordon and done the same thing. But then you have to, like, there's so many people. What I'd rather do if you're going to have those types of takes is wait to see what the lineups are and say, and wonder, you might not even have to X out Eric Gordon. He's not going to show up in any of your lineups. But now just wait and see what happens. So I don't like Eric Gordon, so I'm going to X him out. Boom. And we're Eric Gordon. Bye-bye. See, that was easy. And so that's the thing. That's the way I think that you should, quote unquote, trim your player pool. Now, another thing that I'm going to do, and what I like doing after the builds, which is what we are right now, is I would like to take a look at the stacks. Okay. So what I'll see here is that there are some lineups that have 4 or more of a team, and I could click through and see what they are, but I could already tell you what they are. They're ones that they're going to have 4 Spurs, okay? And if you don't like that, you know, you could just eliminate those from your player pool. Like, I don't want 4 from one team, so I'll just do this. Boom, 0 exposure of 4 twos, and then this one, 0 exposures of 4-man stacks. So that's and I think this is very healthy to do. And depending on the size of the stack, the size of the slate, that's how you can adjust them this way. So now when you go back to here, after we've made this, you still have 50% Kelly Olynyk. He's the highest owned guy. And what you've done is you sort of reduced your risk a little bit, you know? Oh boy, Kyle Lowry. Do you really like Kyle Lowry? He's another guy I just don't like playing. You know, so you could just go ahead and X out Kyle Lowry. And until Sabersim yells at you and say, boy, you sure you want to do this? You could just keep doing this. Okay. And I do think it's somewhat healthy. As a matter of fact, just for now, before I forget, I'm going to reduce these lineups to 30 and see what I have. Giannis, Trey Jones, Olynyk. Okay, so nothing looks particularly annoying, right? Let's go back to game stacks, team stacks, and I'm going to actually roll with this, at least for the time being. I'm going to put these in my DraftKings lineups. Then we'll come up and answer actual questions about the players, and we'll talk about maybe some PGA or whatever it is. So the big news that came out since we did our early video was that Michael Porter Jr. was out. Okay, so what that did, most specifically, is it opened up Bruce Brown as a really, really strong play. And Bruce Brown, for those of you who remember, last season, he put up some good numbers. He put up some very good, some really strong fantasy games. So I'm not too worried about getting a whole bunch of Bruce Brown. So K9 says, so when do you make your final build for the NBA? A couple of minutes before lock. Now here we're going to have to, err on the side of do as I do, not do as I say, not as I do. Because just since you asked, I'll give you my answer. So I usually have dinner like 6:45 or 7 o'clock. So whenever dinner's kind of ready, I just kind of lock it in. And then depending on when dinner's over, then I check back to see if anything needs to be late swapped and things like that. If I were honestly telling you what you're supposed to do, NBA wise, there's really no reason to put lineups in until the last minute, right? Except for the fact that, you know what, you do, I guess you have to model for some degree of technical issues, so I would say 5 minutes before lock, you're supposed to put your lineups in. I guess that makes the most sense. And then honestly, what you're supposed to do, like if I were not, I want to say how old I am. Hey, shit. If I weren't 55, and I was like 30 or 25 or whatever, or I had the time to really grind like a full NBA night, I would be on top of this literally all night long. And I would be looking to see if there are any NBA changes to, something like that, meta, and be on top of all changes. And if you want to behave really, really optimally, what you'll do is with each kind of break in the action, like for example, I'll put this up here. So you'll see that there's a 7 o'clock start, and then there's a 7:30. Like if you were really, really, again, in my younger days, whatever it is, I would really be watching as early as 7:20 for late swap opportunities. In other words, like if I had guys in this Cleveland-Orlando game or guys in this Atlanta-Detroit game, and they were underperforming, I would immediately try to juice up guys in the later games, and get off of chalk. And I would literally do this the first opportunity I get. I think 7:20 really. If I had Cade Cunningham and he was doing poorly, I would at 7:20 just go in here, and you know what you do? You should then kind of lower the projections on the top rated guys to give yourself more unique lineups, or to just kind of just be a little bit more kooky, because you don't want to just play to cash. You want to play to give yourself a chance. So, and then I would do it for each kind of set of games. So there's a 7:30, and then there's an 8 o'clock. I would go back again at 7:50 and see this state of my lineups. And then the next break would be at like 8:50. I would come back at 8:50 before the 9 o'clock and see the state of my lineups. And then, I would come back at 9:50 and see the state of my lineups and do late swapping and things like that. And I would like to think that the real top players that play 6 figures a night or more do this. And it's funny because when I first talked to Bobby about DFS a long time ago, right before I started playing, I just presumed that the people that played for so much money worked harder than they actually do. Like if I were, again, in a former life, if I were putting in, 6 figures a night into the NBA or more, do you know what I would do? I would literally have a person working for me at every city and every stadium. Let it be an intern. Let it be a guy I pay $50 a night just to see if there's any guy limping in the freaking warm-ups, if there's any late possibilities that the things happening. Just it cost me $50 per game, per whatever, and I would have guys on top of this literally all day. I would also have like kind of interns that what they would do is continue to run builds for late swaps, just in case something happens. I really think that the amount of money people put into this, I don't think that I really don't think they work as hard as they could. Like if you saw the effort I would put into my hedge fund, I mean, seriously, I mean, like, I'm shocked that there's not more of that with the really high stakes NBA players, especially ones that are so dependent on late news and things like that. So that's what I would do. And now somewhere between being a being a freaking professional like animal and doing that and being just kind of the casual putting your lineups in and just forgetting about it, somewhere in the middle is probably, life optimal, right? But it just depends on what you're looking to accomplish, right? Do you want to be at a computer all night long for the NBA? No, probably not. But maybe you do. I don't know. There are better sports if you don't want to do that. You know what sport you can play, which is awesome? Play tennis, or play MMA DFS is amazing. You put your lineups in. Nothing really happens after it locks. You just get to sweat the whole night. Or car racing, amazing. You know what I mean? Nothing really happens. That there's no late swap. Who cares? But basketball is a very difficult sport that requires, nonstop attention. And that's what makes it hard. And that's what, some people say makes it fun. I personally don't like it. It's because, my life is a little bit less, conducive to being able to play perfectly. Nonetheless, since you asked, that's the way I would play NBA in general. I would continue to update my projections. And unfortunately, I'm not able, TrueDFS is not able to provide just the same type of updated projections throughout the industry. But I mean, you do get to see if you subscribe to the SaberSim package, at least you get the SaberSim projections updating. It's better than nothing. They're really good. But listen, I'm not going to lie to you. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work to be good at NBA. It takes a lot of work to be profitable at NBA, and you got to get lucky. So it is what it is. This is actually interesting. I didn't even notice that the Miles Turner is playing. Yeah, there it is. So that's what shows what I know. But again, most of the stuff about, honestly, with the NBA and finding the good plays in the NBA, most of it really is incorporated within the projections. All the stuff like, and just be careful when you're listening to content or when you're analyzing things that you don't double and triple count certain things. And I've seen this a lot. People say, I don't know, like take a guy like Dennis Smith Jr., for example. Say, Dennis Smith Jr. projects really well. And in addition to that, you have, Terry Rozier is out and they have a very, very favorable matchup. Well, you said the same thing 3 times, right? That's why he projects well, for all this stuff. So, and people do this all the time in baseball as well. They say, well, XYZ looks really good and it's a park upgrade. Well, okay, that's all been factored in already. So just make sure that you don't double and triple count bits of information to justify your play. Hope that makes some degree of sense. All right, so you can feel free to just fire off NBA takes or questions. I guess I'll just go over. I mean, Josh Richardson looks to be the best play. I mean, it's a little scary because he's typically a high, not a real high usage guy, but he does rate to be very strong. And then I have Bruce Brown as my next point per dollar guy. Then you have Kelly Olynyk, Beverly, and Trey Jones. And all of this is so that you can play one of at least Giannis or LeBron, right? I personally think that this ownership projection on Giannis is a complete joke, and it's my projection. So am I calling myself a joke? Well, that's the beauty of the fact that I'm taking it from the industry, because if they're wrong, it's not my fault. I'm just reporting it. You know what I mean? Like, this is. It seems the aggregate ownership projection is 12%. I just feel with all this value that he's just going to be able to get jammed in. Okay, so would you consider Primo over Richardson? Okay. And I'll get to Book Night in a second. Well, let's just, again, I hate to say it this way, but let's go back to the projections first and see like how much we're gonna give up. Where is it? Oh shoot, Primo. But the problem is that I'm looking at Primo and he's just not even close to the projection as Richardson. That's why it's hard, you know. I know you don't feel comfy with Richardson, and I think that if it were close, I would say sure, but it's just not close. That's kind of my problem. So you're saying is Book Night still a thing? The problem with Book Night is this: is that my original take or my original concept for playing the Book Night was predicated on the fact that Dennis Smith Jr. would be really high owned. And it turns out with all this new value out there, not to from San Antonio straight to Bruce Brown, Dennis Smith Jr. is not going to be as chalky as he originally was. So that's why I don't think the Book Night play carries with the same, you know, same amount of teeth, or same teeth, amount of teeth. Doesn't have the same teeth. Whatever it is, not quite as good of a play. Let's put it that way. Yeah, Christian, I agree with you. Giannis, I think he'll be really highly owned in single entry. I mean, I agree with that. I don't know. I mean, again, this is all a bunch of nonsense. When I see my own aggregate saying 13% Giannis, and this is what as a content provider, which is kind of, you know, whatever it is, as someone who's trying to convey information, I struggle with this because should I, and here's a rhetorical question, I guess not even rhetorical, it's a direct question, should I increase the ownership projection on the sheets that I'm providing for you based on my subjective assessment of what it should be? In other words, like I just basically have a formula and algorithm that takes all the ownership projections across the industry, factors in how accurate they've been in the past for each model, and then just kind of come up with this weighted average. And so if it's 13%, but in my head I'm like, you know, it's got to be 40. Should I make it 40? See, I don't think that I should, because there's Bobby.
What's up?
I don't think that I should, because what I'm trying to represent here is not just my ownership projection. It's more what is the industry suggesting. Okay. Okay, so I'm glad Bobby is here. Bobby, you want to give us you know what, just to update you, I did a full like kind of Saber Sim kind of build of the NBA, and how to use it and all this stuff. I went over some of the plays, but I really didn't get into too much of it. So why don't you tell me what you're looking at as far as the NBA goes?
Yeah, so just going through it, I don't. The thing that's frustrating a little bit is I end up like, as of right now, I probably would have Josh Richardson in more lineups than I'd like, and that's something I really didn't want to do when the day started, and I still don't really want to do it. So I would like to try to find a way to get off of that. Um, I think Trey Jones is still a guy who I would consider a core guy for me. I really like Markkanen, even at this price tag. My core would be actually basically what I posted on our site from earlier, pretty similar. I actually like the idea of playing a low-owned Tyrese Halliburton. I really like Dennis Smith Jr., as we discussed earlier.
Well, Bobby, let me interrupt you for a second. I don't suggest that you haven't been following it, but only because you have other stuff going on that I figured you might not have seen. But the big news that broke was Michael Porter Jr. being out, and Bruce Brown is showing up as a total like smash play for me. Like challenging Josh Richardson actually for for best value on the board. Have you and he's going to be owned. He's going to be like 35%. So I just wanted to ask you, like, what do you think of Bruce Brown relative to Josh Richardson, relative to other players of Slate?
That's a really good question, because I did notice that,
Okay.
but I'm still first of all wanting to know, is he going to start? And I don't think it's a guarantee that he will or won't. He's pretty active in general, but where does he have room to do anything on this team? You still have Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, like Jokic, Jeff Green off the bench will play more minutes. To be honest with you, I think that the guy who, if you want to take a long shot on somebody, I think that Bones Highland would be a really good play now. I think that actually boosts him up. But at 50% ownership, I probably would be trying to avoid it unless I was off the board elsewhere. And I like some other off the board plays. I think he's pretty safe to get in the 25 range, and potentially a little bit higher. I just don't know if we're going to see the same guy from the Nets that's going to get 40. Right. He's really the only other capable player on the court. Okay. But I think he can get you 30. I think it's possible. I just think that you're asking probably a pretty efficient game from him, and I would say the ownership would probably have me trying to be underweight on him. I'm going to guess he's going to be somewhere around 50% owned.
Yeah, I had Bruce Brown at 35, but
okay, around 35, I feel like I could stand being with the field. At 50%, it gets a little bit dicey, and I just think there's better. I would rather take shots on this other value that could absolutely smash because they're going to need to score than play him. Even though he could get there, they're going to need to do something for this. Somebody's going to have to put up points for the Spurs tonight. So I think I might be more interested in speculating on, even though again, I mentioned I get worried about their rotations. Instead of Josh Richardson, if you're playing Josh Richardson already, maybe you don't do this, but maybe I would consider Sohan and Primo, because I think there's an outside chance that I think that somebody's going to have to score offensively for them. And I don't know. I don't think it's going to be all Keldon Johnson and Podol, who doesn't play all the minutes anyway. So that's sort of the way I would try to go. And mostly it would be, it's based on ownership. If you really think 35%, I think that he does end up, I think it's a pretty reasonable number for him. But if he's 50%, it's a big difference between those two to me. And I just wouldn't play a Bruce Brown, Trey Jones, Josh Richardson lineup or something like that. That just seems like you're getting way overkill.
Yeah, that makes sense. What do you think of I'm just trying to look at the lower owned guys that I have projected kind of okay. And there's a guy we talked about earlier, but actually we didn't really talk about this guy. What do you think of this is a guy I hate playing, but what do you think about Kyle Lowry at 5,600 on DraftKings?
I'll tell you what, he's put up a couple games and I think he looks awful. That's part of my prediction of why the Lakers end up the Heat end up with somehow with Westbrook after the buyout. He's playing a ton of minutes, and just being on the court and playing a ton of minutes is probably enough of a reason why he's reasonable. But I don't feel like that's the kind of play. I think it's the kind of thing I'd want to stay away from. Incredibly low usage. He doesn't really run any of the offense. He's had a couple of 6-assist games, but that's I don't think he's getting any higher than that. He just played his former team twice and still, combined 45 fantasy points between the two games. I don't feel like there's enough of a ceiling for me to feel too excited. He had that 140 fantasy point game where he made, what was the reason for that? He had the 3 steals in the block. I guess that's why. I don't feel thrilled about the Kyle Lowry play. I think it's fine, but I'm not excited about it.
I'm going to go back to a couple of Lakers for a minute. Just kind of reiterate. We talked about these guys earlier, but just in case people weren't around. What do you think of either Patrick Beverley or Lonnie Walker?
I like Lonnie Walker a lot. I like Walker better than Beverley. And yeah, that's because they're going to need, they need another creator. I don't know if these ownerships are right. I think Lonnie Walker,
these ownerships are ridiculous. I was talking about that when you came on here.
Yeah.
And I was wondering whether I should be manually upgrading these ownerships if I just know instinctively that they're wrong. But I just don't think that's pure. I think I should just report what the industry's representing. I don't know.
No, I think you're doing it the right way.
I'm seeing Giannis at 13%. That's like a joke, right?
It seems crazy with the value that's out there that every top spend is going to be unowned, basically.
Right. What's the point?
Just really just doesn't make any sense. I don't see that as being the case. But the only reason it kind of makes a little sense is because nobody looks so much better than the other guy,
Yes.
But I would try to get overweight those guys and stock up. And that's why guys like Bruce Brown, maybe it is a good day for him, because even if he doesn't quite get there, he puts up 20 fantasy points or something like that. If you get those top guys right, because I think you want to try to double spend up tonight. I would be trying to treat this like a stars and scrubs slate. Again, I know I say this, I'm going to say this a lot on big slates. There's news that we don't know of, that we haven't heard of yet, that's going to happen. Somebody's going to start who we don't expect. Something different is going to happen here. And I personally would like to try to cram in some value. Like I said, I would probably be using Josh Richardson as like a placeholder until we actually get starting lineups for some of these other teams. Hopefully we'll get the Denver one will be hard to get. That's the only problem. We're probably not going to know the starting lineup there, but I would be trying to double spend up tonight. That would be my general outlook of what I was trying to do. And I think that you're projecting, for what it's worth, I like the Jokic and LeBron together. Still quite as my favorite top double spend up together. I also like the Giannis and either KD or Kyrie. And I still think James Harden is too cheap, and I don't understand why no one will play him. And my answer would be, oh, well, there's all these other guys too, but nobody's really playing those guys either. So it just seems like something's a little bit off with the ownerships. And I don't think it's just on our site or SaberSim or your compiled projections, because other sites they're kind of all over the map. From what I've seen, I just looked at 2 other sites on my way back.
We've got a major sweat here, so we have to.
What do you got to sweat for?
We have to pull this up. No, this is my AAU team. That's playing right now at Island Garden. I'm not there. I'm not watching. I'm not there. I'm doing this, so I have to sweat. They're the team in black right here, so we have to.
What's this? Oh, what do you watch it on?
They have live stream.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
They have a live stream. Unfortunately, it's not exactly perfect. The scoreboard is up. The camera is mispointed, so you can't see the scoreboard. Hey, this is it's rough out there. This is the other coach in the red sweatshirt right here. So we're sweating this hard.
They're playing without you.
Yep.
Oh man.
Yeah. So we got to worry about that.
It looks like Jaden Ivey was just ruled out, by the way, which I would give a huge bump up. I would take away everything I said earlier about why I'd be afraid to play Cunningham, and he would get a huge boost for me here, especially on FanDuel. Nobody else in that game really, unless for some reason they started Killian Hayes, which I don't see them doing that. I think I would probably just say that that I just think Cunningham gets a huge boost from that Jaden Ivey news.
Yeah, I didn't notice that, the Jaden Ivey being out.
Still high on taking shots with Levine DeRozan. I've never been high on DeRozan today, so I'm not at all interested in DeRozan. I am interested in Levine, and I think DeRozan's fine. I just like other plays better. I'd rather play Harden at 96 than DeRozan at 89. We haven't seen a game from DeRozan with all these guys healthy.
I did I don't know if you looked already, but I thought I did a pretty decent job. Was the early NFL preview I put out today. I mean,
I'm going to take a look a little bit later. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet.
Yeah, I just so you guys know, I mean, there's one team that really looks. Oh, that's right for 3. Sorry. Miami at Detroit is looking to be, pretty well projected, to say the least. It's an interesting slate. There's a lot of teams that I think you can play, and I'm actually really looking forward to it. By the way, also for those of you that follow this, I did a survivor pool again, my week 8 survivor pool update with Brave Jayhawk, and it was really, really cool. We spent about 20 minutes going over like the other stuff from last week and whatever, and then we spent like 40 minutes going over just he's still alive in the big $6 million circuit pool. So we spent like a good 40 minutes just going over that. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it's interesting to me. Maybe it's not interesting for anybody else.
I think it's really interesting. I want to watch that too.
But you know what? It's honestly really high level shit, and it's really if you want to really listen, if you want like kind of an in on how really smart people think about stuff that they're really good at. I mean, me and Mike went back and forth on his entries in a very, very advanced way. And again, something you're not getting anywhere else. So
yeah, I think that's a really cool thing. I mean, I really do. And obviously you nearly took that one down last year. You won the one already in week 7. You chopped it. So,
Yep.
so how many lineups are you allowed to have in that giant one?
Well, oh, you mean the Circa? You mean the one that in Vegas?
Yeah.
That's six entries per
6
professor.
entries. How many you got left?
Oh, I'm 0 there. Yeah,
I'm sorry. I thought you still had one left. My bad.
I have one left in a different pool that's only 400,000 for first.
Oh, okay. No peanuts. Okay.
Peanuts. What are we gonna do with peanuts? Right? Exactly.
Oh, that's hilarious. How many people are in the big Circa one?
It started with, I mean, 6 million for first. Or started with like 6,000 people or something.
Oh,
They're down
wow.
to like 125, I think, something like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, man, our boy Michael, he's got 2 entries left, so it's well, that's fun. It's fun.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yep.
That's wild. Yeah, that stuff is. I find that stuff so fascinating, and I feel like you could take up all your time just trying to figure it out. So I suggest
All of
anybody
it.
who plays any Survivor.
All of it. Every bit of time. Trust me.
Yep. There's so many different things. I mean, it's really nuts. And because it's going through the whole season schedule. Everybody tries to think of it as just
Here's a good example. Like, my friend Jack, who again, he's my partner, and I've known him since college. Like, we literally don't speak like 6 months out of the year, and then during Survivor Pool, like, I would say literally 30 texts a day back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, not to mention like a couple hours a week. It's a grind, and it's a lot of fun. So,
Yep.
yeah. Okay, so just
I just answered Nick's question in here. He had to ask the DeJounte or Trey tonight. And by the way, I just think both of those would be
probably
extremely.
neither.
I think they're terrible plays on DraftKings. I would actually go so far as to call them terrible plays. Not even just bad, just terrible. I don't care whether they get there or not. I mean, you got Harden at 9,600, who's getting 60 every game. And you've got two guys who haven't gotten the score that would have gotten you there at all this year. And they're playing a slow-paced team. If they get there, so be it. I have no interest in either of them.
Does anybody have any questions for me about the golf? And I say that only because listen, I put the golf freaking YouTube thing up for free, and I don't want people to come here and say, "Hey, who do you like in golf?" You could have just freaking look at it. You know what I mean? So, but it's a cool slate because it's like everybody's terrible. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have any of the top guys in there. You get guys like Thomas Dietrich is like 10-9. It's one of those kind of fun slates. Ooh, dude, you know who I have like so much of in DraftKings and NBA? I have 20%. Oh, because what's his name's out. Okay. I have 20% Austin Reeves. I guess it's not that much. Okay.
I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah.
It could, but I think that it's like he'll have a little bit of ownership. That's the thing with the Lakers, though. It could be any of the. It's hard to know whether it'll be him or not or none. I would lean none a little bit over him. Okay. The difference is he's Ford eligible and none is not, and that makes it a little bit of a difference.
And I got 40% LeBron.
I love that.
Pretty heavy on that.
I'm very into the LeBron idea, by the way. I think the LeBron is probably LeBron, Harden, Jokic, Giannis would be my favorite guys to specifically target at the very top.
And just so you guys know, I am still on the Dennis Smith Jr. I have 30% of him.
Love it.
We'll just see what happens.
I love it. I mean, look, you know what happens? He picks up 2 fouls really quickly. He has no points, zero fantasy points at the end of the first quarter. He ends up with 55.
Yeah, but you know what? It looks to be like 12% owned. Somebody asked me earlier in the show about if I still like Book Night, and the answer is no, only because the whole point of the Book Night play was predicated on Dennis Smith Jr. being like really chalky. And it seems as though with all this new news that Dennis Smith Jr. is just kind of a play now. He's not like going to be like enormous chalk. So I don't think I need to do the Book Night.
The only thing I would say about the Book Night thing is keep an eye out for the starting lineup. And the other thing is that, like, okay, so he had a DUI 2 days before the first game of the season.
Did he really?
And they played him, yeah. And this is what Charlotte's doing. The Charlotte they get arrested more than the Florida Gators from the Urban Meyer era.
Oh,
it's nuts. Have you watched that sheet? You see that 41 of the players on that one team that won the title have been arrested, and and 3 of them have been convicted for murder.
Lovely.
It's nuts. I mean, Aaron Hernandez is one of them, obviously, but Primo ruled out. Okay. Now you're going with Spurs. They're gonna have to move.
Wait, Primo is out.
Yeah, that's a huge bump to me for Richardson too. Unfortunately, I like Sohan too as well. Keep an eye out if McDermott somehow cracks the starting lineup. I don't think he would because Primo wasn't going to start anyway. But it wouldn't shock me. They've done that. They've done weird stuff like that before. That Spurs game, I would probably, outside of Cade Cunningham, be just fading the first. I would be waiting till 7:30 to make my lineups.
That's interesting.
I want to see more things out there. I'm not as interested in these games. Corey Joseph is starting at 3,300. By the way, I don't think
for what team?
For the Pistons.
I don't even know who's playing.
They just rotate their guards a little bit too much for me to like it, but it's a little bit interesting because of no Ivy.
I mean, they really want us to play Josh Richardson. Like it's like
they're desperate for you to, but I would say though that they keep an eye out for that lineup because I don't know that, and even if it's not Richardson, like I'm interested a little bit. I would have a little bit of interest in Romeo Langford as a really long shot play. Maybe that's a little bit of a reach.
He's on the Spurs.
Yeah, and McDermott's probably a little bit of but I don't know.
These guys, I didn't even know these guys are on the Spurs. It's so funny.
This is pretty nuts. This is what I mean, though, with the NBA. Like, come on, guys, just let us know. Let us know this stuff a little bit.
He wasn't even questionable, right?
No, not even like wasn't even a thought. He was like my pivot guy.
Right.
Like, damn. Let's see real quick.
Let me get Primo out of my lineups. I'll change them. I'll probably update projections or whatever, but at least for now, I'm not. I didn't have any Primo in FanDuel. Okay, so I'm going with that.
I do like Sohan. Sohan, McDermott, who I guess are my biggest beneficiaries, and it just solidifies the Trey Jones Richardson thing.
I'm basically locked into Bruce Brown right now with FanDuel.
Oh yeah, he had a gun in the car too. That's K9 reminded me. Not only did he get a DUI, he also had a gun in the car. It's pretty nuts. Oh well, okay. Let's see.
Bobby, when you're like really focused on the NBA, you don't have your other personal shit going on. You like are really like grinded in. Like how often do you like? And I was talking about this earlier before you came on. How often do you check like for late swaps? Do you check at like each like break point of like the 10 minutes? Yeah, I figured, right?
I set an alarm every 10 minutes before each game.
Yeah, that's smart. Okay.
Game
that's
logs.
That's what I was telling people that like really good players are supposed to do.
Yeah, and I think if sure, there's some nights where I'm going to go have a life and have a dinner or something like that. But even then, I'll still double check to see who's in the starting lineup at those 10-minute marks because it's too big. It's too much just to miss out on. And what's great is that, like as you pointed out on the weekends in the past sheets, like that's what people just don't do any of that on the weekends. They don't. There's none of it. You'll have guys who are 15% owned who are announced out 10 minutes before lock, things like that.
Right. You know I'm getting like 20% of on FanDuel is Mitch Robinson.
Yeah, I actually I forgot to mention earlier, I actually like Hartenstein too.
Yeah, that's the second time you brought him up in the last couple of days.
I'm just gonna I think you just roll with it in general. Like there's a ceiling there. He's a little cheaper on DK tonight, but he's a little more better of a FanDuel player. And when they're they're a good enough favorite against a bad team. I'm not saying they're gonna cover this for sure, but like there is a big upside for him, and even in his normal minutes, he probably ends up in a 20 to 25 range. If you get any boost on those minutes, or Robinson gets in foul trouble, which he's common to do, and even without that, we've seen Hartenstein put up like 35s and 40s in 20 minutes in the past. He's incredibly active against a team that can't guard the bigs, doesn't rebound well. It's game that suits him. They're sloppy. He can get steals and blocks. Feels like a really good spot to take a shot on Hartenstein. The problem is you have so much other value now. It's how do you prioritize him over some of this other stuff? But I like if you're going to play the Robinson, I'd say every bit as much I like Hartenstein. Let's see. Seeing what else happened. Yeah, there's just boosted up a little bit so far to these other Spurs. Not as much as they should be, in my opinion.
I don't think they've updated anything yet. You could be right.
Somehow Josh Richardson's projection changed for me, but he's the only one. Let's see. Yeah, it's not been updated yet, so that's it's kind of a tricky one.
Yeah, but how much more could he go up? You know what I mean? Like,
and the thing is, like, Primo is a guy who like, if anything, they hasn't been like aggressive enough in the past, so it's not like whoever's replacing him is probably a more aggressive guy than he's been. But I think Sohan gets more minutes. I guess he's the one who benefits the most, but it wouldn't surprise me in the lottery. I wouldn't mind taking a shot on Romeo Langford.
Dude, I like that, huh?
That's like the real long shot play. Just don't know if you need it, though. I mean, all these other bodies they have 12 guys who can play, or 10 guys who can play basketball.
Or they could do something.
Yeah, or ish. I mean, they're 3-1, man.
They have a uniform.
All the worst teams have been the best teams. It's the weirdest thing.
Oh wait, this is San Antonio we're talking about, right? So let me see if these guys have updated them yet. Hold on. Seeing, no, they still have Primo in there. Keldon Johnson isn't affected by that. I mean, Trey Jones obviously becomes even a better player.
Trey Jones is really. Oops, sorry.
Yeah, I'm looking at that. The Romeo Langford. I guess it's not. Malachi Branham season quite yet, right? Or Blake Wesley season or anything like that.
Right.
Looking at all these different guards. Langford's an actual, resemblance of an NBA player.
Yeah.
And maybe the Langford. When's this game?
It's not till 9.
That's not till 8. That's like 100 hours from now. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, the only guy I'd be playing in the first series of games would be Cade. And even that, I don't think you need to, but I do like it. I think this could be like a 50+ game for Cade, very likely.
So let me follow up with you on something else that I was talking about earlier. So when you are looking, you check back like with each kind of like different break point about 7:30 game, 8 o'clock game. How much do you consider how you're doing so far, and how do you? I mean, how do you change that? You know what I mean? Like,
so if it's 7:30 or 8, one of the biggest mistakes, and it happens in our Discord every day, and it always drives me nuts, and it drives me nuts with everybody on Twitter. Everybody complains after the first quarter. Oh my God, Cade Cunningham only has 3 fantasy points. What's going on? If he's not in foul trouble, he's probably fine. You know what I mean? Like, or Donovan Mitchell, is one of those who's like a huge second half scorer, doesn't do much in the first half. So for me, it factors in. But like, unless somebody gets hurt or is in foul trouble, I won't really factor it in unless it's for the very much later games that I'll adjust things and take the longer shots.
Okay.
And I like this, it's an interesting question from Dunbar here. Mobley on FanDuel. The thing that threw me off of Mobley earlier is he was projected to be the second highest owned player on FanDuel. And I love Mobley. I mean, you're not going to find a guy who loves Mobley more than I do. But why would Mobley be so high owned when he hasn't put up a game this season that has been anywhere near what you would need to even be adequate or even be able to cash with that lineup?
Right.
It feels odd for him to be that ownership. Now that I see that the ownership's come down a little bit, I'm totally fine with him, but I don't think it's like a special play. But my main thing I try to do there, Sheets, is just try to like take a little edge that maybe somebody else isn't playing. Remember last year when I won the 100K, it was a game where I think Isaiah Jackson started or something, and Terry Taylor had like the 45 fantasy point game or something. Okay. And he was 1% owned, and Isaiah Jackson was 78% owned. Things like that. Try to take a little shot like that, and I'll still play more Isaiah Jackson, but ended up switching anyway. Things like that are the things I try to do. But how many Spurs in single entry on DK is fine? I would say 3, but I would try and aim to play 2. And in larger, not in single entry, in single entry 3 is fine. But the problem is I don't love. It's going to be hard. It could be one of those days where you're like, oh, but it was Keita Bates-Diop, Romeo Langford, and Gorgui Dieng who did all the scoring.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? The Spurs are weird, man, and I think they're going to get thrashed tonight. So
you keep saying that.
I really think that.
And yet they keep on.
Well, I haven't said that about the Spurs except for the first game of the season, and they did get thrashed in that one. because I haven't had a chance to say it. But you're right. I would have said it.
Meanwhile, my man Potato Commish, my friend, the sharp sports guy. I mean, he's so far like 11-3 for the year in the NBA. He has another one. He had Phoenix last night, and he's releasing Miami tonight. So
Miami, and he's giving the points because the spread shifted on that one a little bit too. And so Miami minus 2.5.
I guess.
I think that makes a lot of sense, actually. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Only minus 148. I might just do that, just in case the game's close. Let's see. I'm just going to take one last check and see if there's any updated ownerships here. All right. What are you guys having for dinner over there?
We're doing branzino.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, Mrs. Sheets is grilling up some branzino. Got a little starch, got a little baked potato in there too. But yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I'm gonna probably get to that.
Yeah, probably makes some sense. I don't think Corey. I think he's viable, but I don't love Corey Joseph. Only interested in Cunningham for me. I think you're going to find better value later. That's my answer to that last question. And with that, I'm ready to get out of here, Sheets.
All right, later, guys. Good luck.
Thanks.